3 o'clock it is. Thank you everybody for coming. There's lots of awesome talks. I'm glad that you guys decided to come to mine. Hopefully I don't disappoint. My name is Forrest Barth. I work at Security Metrics up in Orem, and I've been a penetration tester there for about 1.5 years. Prior to that, I was doing systems and network administration for them. And then before that, I was doing vulnerability assessment scanning for PCI compliance. All of those positions at Security Metrics. And then before that, I did network administration for 3 different companies. So come from a pretty extensive background. And hopefully I'm able to impart some helpful knowledge for you guys today. Really cool technique. It's a very narrow kind of topic, but it allows me to do sort of a deep dive on that subject, and hopefully I'm able to convey that information for you. So big thanks to Utah Open Source for awesome conference. Second year here, and I absolutely love it. So, by the way, just want to let you guys know, feel free to ask questions anytime, just raise your hand. I've got plenty of time to work on this presentation. I managed to cram it down into 20 minutes when I presented at SaintCon last October. So we have more than enough time to be able to cover the material here. So. All right, so let's get meta here for a minute. Just a brief overview of what we're going to be getting into. This is sort of the outline of the talk. What is idle scanning? What can it do, and why should you care? I'll give you a step-by-step walkthrough of how the process works, each individual packet being sent, and every response coming back is the real meat of the subject. I'll also show you what it looks like both from the attacker's perspective as well as the target's perspective, and give you techniques on how to mitigate that and prevent that from happening if you're on that side of the clock. So what is idle scanning? According to Fyodor, the author of Nmap, who I would take as a little bit of an authority on the subject, he says it's the stealthiest scan type of all, and it allows you to exploit trusted IP address relationships. So what does that mean? Basically, I like to think of it as the Jedi wave of TCP port scanning. Lets you get places you're not supposed to, and makes targets think that you're a completely different device. So I first stumbled across this as I was just digging through the man page in Nmap, just reading all the different flags and what can be done. And I saw this SI and zombie host. I was like, zombie host? What in the? So just started really digging into that and found that it's a really, really cool, really powerful tool. So what makes this possible is idle scanning uses an address spoofing attack to bounce the scan off of a dumb zombie host. Basically, you're sending your packets to your target posing as this zombie. So you're spoofing the source address, saying, "Hey, this is my address," and it sends replies back. You take advantage of this is a behavior that's defined in the RFC for TCP communications. So it's inherently built into any stateful sort of connection. So one caveat is that the zombie host needs to be idle. It can't be doing a whole lot, and there can't be a whole lot of communication going on. That's where the idle scan portion of the name comes from. We'll get a little bit more into that in a bit. So this allows for blind TCP port scanning. Normally, if a host has ACLs in place that would prevent you from scanning it, that's it. You're out of luck. You're not going to get any sort of response. You're not going to be able to elicit any sort of communication because it sees I'm not supposed to talk to you, and just wall goes up. With idle scanning, even though your address might not be able to interact with the machine, you can pose as somebody who can. So if they have VLANs set up where it's only communication is allowed from this range of addresses, you can pose as one of those addresses that are allowed to communicate and perform the port scan that way. It's also allows you to get certain permissions or privileges of that target. Say that your normal address is only allowed to see this service, and this service, whereas this other network has many more services. You can then see what is normally hidden from you that way. Any questions so far? Okay. Another advantage is being able to misdirect anybody who's trying to defend this sort of attack. Assuming anyone checks the log files, the source address will be that of the zombies rather than yours. Unless the network equipment is doing some pretty in-depth logging on as far as what physical port is doing what communication, this is going to go completely under the radar. Exploiting trust relationships is as I said before, with the sort of the ACL scenario where normally you're not allowed to view that service. The target blindly trusts the source address in the TCP header. There's no sort of challenge response in place for the initial connect. As a result, you're able to masquerade as the zombie and get a response back, although it doesn't go directly to you. I'll demonstrate how you can see that there is a response. It allows for a lot of network discovery. In ideal conditions, you'll be able to see what hosts are trusted more than other hosts, what VLANs have higher access privileges, things like that. So the whole basis of the attack comes down to the behavior of stateful connections in TCP. Every TCP packet has a fragment identification number. It's also called a sequence number. It's when you send packets en masse, you want to make sure that they get there in order so it doesn't get all scrambled. Well, using that sequence number, Nmap actually refers to this as an IP ID. So for the purposes of this presentation, that's how we're going to have those labeled. Many OSs, when they send out packets, they simply increment this number. Just add one onto the end. So that enables you to count how many packets it has actually sent. Some OSs will actually randomize the sequence number generation. So in those cases, they would not make a suitable target for this type of attack. I'm sorry, not a suitable target, a suitable zombie host. The IP ID generation is only important for what device you're going to be bouncing the packets off of. A lot of the time with more simplistic operating systems for things like embedded devices, printers, Internet of Things devices, they're ripe targets because they don't take these type of security considerations into account. So you can use that as a zombie host. It also is a great target because those types of devices usually don't get a lot of network chatter. it's somebody will send one print job an hour, or you'll have some device sitting in the basement that people have forgotten about, and you find that on a regular port scan, say, what's this host, and can then use that to try and pivot and find more information on the network. So there's three main packet types that are involved in this sort of scan. So you've got your SYN packet, your SYN-ACK, and your reset. So you can determine if a TCP port is open by sending a SYN packet to the port. SYN packets are the request to synchronize sequence numbers as part of the TCP handshake. When a SYN packet is sent to your target, if the port's open, it'll respond with a synchronized acknowledgement, SYN-ACK. If it's closed, it'll respond with a reset packet, as defined in the RFC. And if it's closed, if it's filtered, it just drops. There's no response at all. An unsolicited SYN-ACK packet will trigger a response with a reset. Because you haven't set up the initial handshake. It says, I don't know what to do with this. Let's try it again. Reset. An unsolicited reset packet just gets dropped by whoever's receiving it. They're like, I don't know what to do with this reset. Ignore it. And all of this behavior is defined by the RFC. Okay, so that's a lot of information to take in. So we're going to try and encapsulate this and condense it down into 3 easy steps. So you too can pwn networks in just 3 easy steps. So step 1, probing. You probe the zombie host that you're bouncing your attack off of, and get the IP ID. So you send a SYN-ACK to the zombie. The zombie will send a reset, and that contains its IP ID number. You write that number down. You'll come back to it later. Second step is you fake you spoof your SYN packet so that it appears to come from the zombie host, and you send it to whatever port you want to scan on the target. And then step 3 is you probe the zombie's IP ID once more and compare it to the original. So if the IP ID has incremented by 2 or more, that means that it has sent a response out to something else that wasn't you in between the time that you probed the first time and now. Most likely that's going to be a reset packet to your target, because your target responds back to the zombie host thinking that's where it originated from, because that's where we told it it originated from. If the IP ID is only incremented by 1, that means there was no communication between the initial probe and now. So the port's either closed or filtered. Can't really tell based on that response, because you don't get the response directly back to you. So that's the basis of the attack. It really took me about 3 hours of reading over this chapter in the Nmap book for it to really click. And they have diagrams and they're all laid out, and I just had a real hard time trying to understand it. And so in order to try and make that a little bit less of a headache for you guys to get, I've broken it down step by step, giving a few different examples here. So with that, let's get to it, because pretty pictures make things easy. Excuse me. Do we have any questions up to this point? Okay. So here's what you need to know. You've got your shadowy figure that is your attacker. The printer that we were talking about earlier, that's going to be our zombie that we're going to bounce all the traffic off of. And then our target is this big server rack here. So the first scenario that we're going to cover is an open port that we're scanning. So first step, we send a SYNAC to the printer to elicit a response. It sends back a reset that contains the IP ID, 1337. From there, we send a spoof SYN packet to the server rack saying, hey, I'm originating from zombie's IP address.
Now, question. You need to be close enough or have routers dumb enough throughout the whole route so that they will not see, hey, this source is not allowed to go through me. Exactly.
So I will get to that toward the end of the talk. That is one of the caveats of this port scanning technique. This typically works best for internal networks. So I'll cover that a little bit more later. So, but excellent question, thank you. And yeah, feel free to interrupt me at any time during this process if I need to go back, and more than happy to. So yeah, SYNAC to the zombie, and the zombie then sends a reset packet because there was no initial SYN packet to send out to set up the handshake. That by sending that one packet out, the IP ID on the zombie has been incremented one more to 1338. From there, we then send another SYNAC to the printer, and the zombie replies showing 1339. So from that, we're able to see that some other packet was sent out to a host that wasn't us between the time that we probed initially and the second time. Yes?
Have you ever gotten a false positive doing this kind of a scan?
Yes, you can, but Nmap inherently has measures to try and counter against that. And it actually does have quality checks in place to see whether a host is a suitable zombie. It will do this process on its own several times, hundreds of times, before it comes back and says, hey, this would be a good host for a zombie, for an idle scan. So since we're able to see that increment of 2 from the initial probe to the second probe, that shows us that port is open, and I guess that's how hacking works? Question mark? This was a lot of fun. Okay, so from here we're gonna move on to a closed port and a filtered port. Was the explanation of the open port pretty clear? All right, cool. So it starts out the same way. We probe the zombie. We get the IP ID back. Write that down. Send a spoof packet to the server rack. Server rack, since that port is closed, sends a reset to the zombie. Zombie wasn't expecting any sort of reset packet, so it just ignores it, drops it like UPS, and moves on with its day. We probe again, and this time we see it's only incremented by 1, showing that the zombie didn't engage in any communication with another host. So that's closed. Third scenario, very similar. SYNAC, get our reset, IP ID, spoof it. It just ignores it completely. Nothing even hits the zombie. So we then do our SYNAC again and see that it has only incremented by 1. So Nmap does this hundreds of times to reduce false positives and attempt to account for things like packet loss, laggy hosts, or a noisy zombie host. If the scan's too unreliable, it'll actually abort and tell you, hey, this zombie host sucks, find a better one. So, from there, we're going to get into what it actually looks like in real-world applications. So this is from the attacker's perspective. I actually did this on a live network, just a real-world scenario. So a couple things to make note of here is, let's see, first thing is the two flags at the top, the no ping and the no DNS resolution. Any sort of direct communication with the host, like with a ping, would show up in a packet log and blow your cover. So if you're defending this host and you see that you're getting port scanned all of a sudden, you're going to step back and look in the logs, and immediately before this port scan happens, you see this ping from some random host on your network that's like, that shouldn't be there. That's kind of undermines the whole point of trying to be very sleuthy in your scans. The DNS resolution can also be traced back that way as well. Anything like host discovery, OS fingerprinting, any sort of version detection, all of that requires you to be able to communicate directly with the host. So that's out. This is purely for seeing what ports are open, closed, and trying to find what trusted networks are, what trusted hosts there are, things like that. As you can see, there were 4 ports discovered in just the regular scan. It also only took a very short amount of time, 0.06 seconds, very, very quickly. With an idle scan, we've got a few different things here. So first, it does need to be run from an elevated user account because you're crafting raw TCP packets. Secondly is the SI flag. That is the actual flag to indicate I want to do an idle scan, plus the IP address of the zombie that you want to use. You can see that it shows you what zombie you're using here. By default, it uses port 80. You can specify what port you want it to use. In this case, you can see that there are actually 4 other services that this target trusts the zombie to be able to access, as opposed to my regular address. Yeah?
Does the zombie port need to be open?
Um,
Or can it be closed but not filtered?
There's the zombies port. Oh,
It's going to send
Yeah.
you a reset, so it doesn't matter if it's open or closed. As long as
Yeah.
you're doing Synac, you're doing something goofy anyway.
I'm trying to think if a Synac to filter. I'm not sure. I'm drawing a blank right now.
But the sequences, if the port is not open, it might affect the sequences. I don't know. You can try an experiment.
Yeah, I would like to be able to test that out and see. I don't know the answer. What's that?
There's free Wi-Fi here.
Yeah, rather than assume that I know something, I'm going to say I don't know, but I can certainly try and find out. I did forget to mention, we do have a booth in the hall where registration is happening, Security Metrics does, so I'll probably be hanging out there for a bit if anybody wants to swing by, and yeah, we can send some packets, see what happens. So, excuse me. And the final scan time was a lot longer because of the amount of traffic involved and the attempts to account for false positives or packet loss, things like that. It takes a much longer time to do scanning. On average, I found it takes about 40 to 80 times the amount of time that it originally did. So this isn't something that you're going to do scans en masse with. It's definitely something that you'll want to do sort of surgical strikes with. So this is a raw TCP dump from a target who is experiencing this attack. So you can see my IP address there, the 14.239. This is the zombie scan traffic. So it shows as coming from this 2.108, that printer that we were talking about. So as far as the host is aware, that's where this scan is originating from. So if somebody's digging through their packet logs, they try and trace it back. Well, that is the misdirection portion. You can have some host sitting idle in a place for weeks, months, whatever, and then be able to perform port scans throughout the entire environment. So pretty neat. So some countermeasures. First thing is, like you were mentioning earlier, is egress filtering. If they have rules in place that doesn't allow outgoing traffic to not correlate with IP space that it should, then it's going to shut down the attack. If you're unable to spoof the address, the entire basis of the attack falls apart. So the reason that this is most effective for internal scans is a lot of internet service providers have started doing a lot of egress filtering to mitigate things like DDoS attacks and attacks like this. Any sort of intrusion detection or prevention system, it can definitely be flagged for, and there are rules and heuristics in place that will detect this. You might need to scan or throttle or modify your scan in some way, whether that's timeouts, number of packets that you're sending, things like that. Another thing is per host sequence numbering. So operating systems, if they're smart enough, will give an individual sequence number for each different host that they're talking to. So I'm talking to this guy 5 packets, I only talk to that guy 7 packets, and this person 3 packets, and it's that throws off the basis. So for every reply that it sends out to your target, it's not going to increment. So it very well could be open, but you don't actually see that. And of course, not having a suitable zombie host. If there's too much noise on the line, that host just isn't able to communicate, or I'm sorry, you're not able to get a clear count of how much communication is going on. That blows it out of the water. So thankfully, Nmap does all this stuff automatically, so you don't have to worry about that. It's just a matter of simply trying it, and if it comes back and says, "Hey, sorry, it's not going to work out." So overall, the kind of a simple breakdown here. Pros: stealthy way of doing scans, misdirection, blind ACL discovery, trust exploitation, lead hacks or skills. Cons: it only works for TCP because it does have to be stateful. It's very dependent on the behavior that's defined in the RFCs. It's very slow, and it's a lot more of a complex kind of scan. It does require an idle zombie host. Completely shut down by egress filtering, and any direct communication with your target blows your cover. That's assuming that you're dealing with sysadmins that actually check packet logs. So that may not be as much of an issue. If you want to know more, I learned this all from Man Pages and Nmap's webpage. The entire Nmap scanning network scanning book, about 2/3 of that is available for free on Nmap's website. So this entire portion of idle scanning is available for free on the website. And It also has some additional stuff as well, like zombie discovery techniques. So being able to identify what hosts on a network would make a good zombie target. Yeah, that's what I've got. Any questions? We may have enough time where we can actually attempt. We can try and give this a run. Well, would I get in trouble for attempting port scanning while on UVU's network? I don't know if that's the best.
No, their guys don't get paid enough to look at all of their logs.
Ignoring this hat, this has no bearing on my actual moral stances. I'm going to hold off until I can get in touch with somebody who would have an authoritative answer on whether we should be doing that or not. So,
Could you just make a virtual machine and hit that?
what's that?
Could you just make a virtual machine and hit that?
It depends on the behavior of the hypervisor, whether or not it's actually MAC address. If it does outbound MAC spoofing, so if it's actually spoofing my MAC, so it wouldn't show my MAC address, possibly.
All we need to know is we need to know what we get in the reset packet that comes back from an open port versus a closed port. Yeah, if it would behave the same. I'm suspecting it's going to be the same, but we can try. Just send a reset to something, even the local host.
Let's see here.
Scan local host and maybe run TCP dump and see what sequence you get.
That would be an interesting experiment. All right, let's see. Oh, hello. Oh, that's cute. All right, let's see. So, trying to think the best way of trying to test this behavior. So, your initial question was about VMs, or?
Will it work if the port is closed on the zombie? Was the original question.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so we can try local host. Local host is a zombie, but there's activity here, so.
Yeah, I'm wondering.
I'd find something inactive.
And I'm not sure of the IP-ID sequence generation on a Mac.
We can just try some kind of stealth scan, just one packet. You need your, right?
Let's see. I'm trying to think. Let me ask my boss. Would I be able to? Actually, I don't want to throw anything on Front Street. What do you think the best thing to do in this situation would be?
I don't have any access to any environments you'd be able to run it.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't want to put anybody's address out in the open. Let's see. I wish I had that question beforehand, so I could have done it in a controlled environment. Let's see, VM. Do I have a VM that I could use and do VM to VM? Let's see. Oh, why not? Let's give it a run. Is my Debian machine even? No, it's.
We have some VMs that are already up you can get to through a web browser.
Through a web browser?
Yeah.
What? All right.
Open a web browser. They're RHEL 6, all of them. You can install Nmap.
All right, let's see here.
rlabs.gurulabs.com.
Labs.gurulabs.com.
Oh, rlab, yeah. Just rlabs.
Oh, okay.
Letter R.
Letter R, got it.
Get past that little thing.
La-di-da-di-da. All right, let's see here. I believe it was... There we go. Security agent. Oh, that's cute. Is that actually required? Probably helps if I'm not blocking everything they're trying to do. Let's see. Let's try that. Nope. It really wants me to install their software before it'll let me use their network.
If you go to the temporary visitor link at the bottom, you can just make up bacon and let you in.
All right. EV Hammond. 801-321-4567. There we go. Fake at fake.org.
Yeah. Now you just have to wait 40 seconds.
What? If I can even remember my own credentials. Maybe. Okay.
Well, that's floating. I've got another question.
Mm-hmm.
So now that you know that specific ports are open on your target
Mhm.
from the zombie, do you have to compromise the zombie first in order to exploit those, or are there other exploits available by just knowing that you could spoof the zombie?
Typically, anything that's going to block your direct communication with the target is going to interfere with that. So it does help to guide efforts as far as pivoting goes. And then it also can help you to prioritize what are considered more high value targets, what networks are more trusted than others, and serve more as a way of seeing what services are available. As far as direct exploitation of those, you would still have to have some means of communicating.
Like by exploiting
Potentially, yeah.
Unless it's some kind of a DOS, where through a zombie, I mean, unless it's something like that, where small traffic causes a big problem. But those are rare.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, even like an amplification attack. Yeah, I can't think of any scenario where you'd directly be able to cause a compromise from that, while still not being able to engage in direct communication. So.
Forrest, what was the command you wanted to run?
Let's see. So we were looking to, modifying the source port. So it would be, let's see here. We'll just say, what's that?
Apparently my printer's not a valid zombie.
Alrighty.
Why must you printing something? What did she print?
Let's see here. So we can attempt. Actually, it's going to be terminal. Okay. What is? I'm trying to recall.
While you're typing that in, I'm just going to interject.
Hmm?
Last year I had major issues with the wireless here, and I was running VirtualBox at the time.
Okay.
And with multiple IP addresses or interfaces on one machine, it really didn't like that, and it kicked me off almost every few minutes.
Okay.
So if other people have issues while running VirtualBox, try shutting it down.
Okay.
We're done attacking it.
Let's see here. Yeah, I have nothing but loopbacks, and I think I have these all set to be bridge, so. Let's see. Yeah, I'm not getting anything. Let's see, we could try. Let's see, how do we have that bridged? And that one's both bridged. Yeah, it doesn't look like I'm going to get much success. Alas. But yeah, it would be cool to try that with the closed port.
Well, we can try a simple experiment. Just send a SYNAC to an open port and send a SYNAC to a closed port on local host. And sniff and see what sequence you get back.
I'll go ahead and just kill that.
It's kind of sixes, right? Because you wouldn't use a closed port on your zombie anyway. If you think you can hit your zombie, you're going to run just a direct Nmap on that and use whatever port you find there, right?
Yeah.
It would depend on the behavior of the zombie. Some closed ports just block the packet and don't respond.
Yeah.
Well, that's a filtering issue. We're assuming that there is.
Oh, so you're assuming that there's
Assuming that there's no
Actu-
filtering for it.
Actually, I'm wondering.
If the port is closed, it shouldn't be a problem. As long as
Yeah.
it's not being filtered, because it will still respond with the
Yeah, with the reset. And that's all we're looking for is just the one reset packet. Yeah. Yeah, so I think it wouldn't matter. Actually, well, the only way I could see it mattering would be if there was some type of ACL in place that's preventing the target from communicating back to the zombie on specific hosts. Yeah, that's, man. I wish I had this kind of these kind of questions when I presented at SaintCon, because then I could have done a little bit more experimentation and research between then and now. So.
Well, luckily it's Thursday. We'll try this later this afternoon, and we'll get back to you if you come by our booth.
Yeah. So. Yeah, pretty short talk. Any other questions, thought experiments, things that we can try? I'm gonna make note here. Questions. Let's see here. Zombie ports closed. Experiment. All right. Yeah. So for anyone interested, I do have another talk that I'm giving on Saturday. It's called How Do I Tails? A Beginner's Guide to Anonymous Computing. I'll be covering the Amnesic Incognito live system. So that'll be a fun little introduction to anonymous computing and maintaining anonymity online. So. Thanks.